This is TechCrunch. After you've worked on rockets that find their way to outer space, well, it can be hard to come up with a second act. For SpaceX alumnus Andrew Redd, it meant looking deep in the ocean. Redd, who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, a region affected by uncharacteristic heat waves and catastrophic fires in recent years, knew he wanted to tackle something in renewable energy. He said, "The experience at a very hardcore company like SpaceX made me realize that I can't just come up with an incremental solution. It actually has to be brand new, and it has to be approached from first principles." Redd left SpaceX and founded Endurance Energy, a startup that has raised a $54 million Series A to eventually harness terawatts of geothermal energy deep in the ocean. Founders Fund led the round with participation from Point72 Ventures, Construct Capital, Felicis Ventures, First Round Capital, Riot Ventures, and Foyer Ventures also involved. The new funding will allow the company to develop its plans for power plants at a time for surging energy demand from AI data centers, electric vehicles, and heavy industry. Since founding the company last year, Redd has grown the team to 25 employees, 12 of whom used to work at SpaceX. The company's vice president of engineering previously worked at Helion Energy, the fusion startup. Geothermal energy is not a new idea. Humans have been using the Earth's heat for millennia, whether it be from spa-like hot springs or geothermal power plants. But Redd, drawing on his experience at SpaceX, figured there was another opportunity people were overlooking. Now, here's how he distilled the problem. Any future energy source should be renewable, or at least non-polluting, in his opinion. He said, "That's my non-negotiable. It should also be available 24/7, or baseload power, as the industry calls it, and it should be quickly deployable and able to generate tens of hundreds of gigawatts of electricity." He quickly ruled out nuclear power because regulatory and construction timelines can stretch on for years. Solar and wind aren't available 24/7 without batteries, and hydropower is limited in where it can be built, plus all the good spots have been taken. And that left geothermal. Redd said geothermal is the only real deployable baseload renewable. But why is it only 0.4% of U.S. energy? There are other startups pursuing geothermal, including Fervo and Zanskar, but those companies need to drill thousands of feet into the Earth's crust to access temperatures hot enough to drive a power plant. So far, the best opportunities for many geothermal startups has been in the western U.S., far from large population centers. The best places to drill, where the crust is thin and magma flows close to the surface like in Iceland or California, have long been claimed. More recently, startups like Fervo Energy, XGS Energy, and Sage Geosystems have found other sites, but to find rocks that are hot enough to drive a power plant, they need to drill thousands of feet deeper. Now, those locations have so far been away from large population centers, but no one has tapped the oceans. At several points around the globe, the Earth's tectonic plates are spreading apart, allowing hot magma to flow to the surface. The U.S. West Coast, Japan, and a good chunk of Southeast Asia are near the so-called Ring of Fire, the geologically active zone that encircles the Pacific Ocean. Heading out to sea poses several challenges. Operating underwater at the depths Endurance is proposing is not easy. Robots will need to do much of the work. Salt water is famously corrosive, so anything placed down there will have to be hardened against both water pressure and corrosion. But Redd said those are surmountable hurdles, pointing to the oil and gas industry's decades of experience drilling in the ocean. Endurance's work should pose less risk to the surrounding ocean, he points out, saying if we have a blowout, quote unquote, you're leaking hot water into the ocean, which is already leaking out in terawatts all over the Earth. Some of the geothermal resources Endurance is eyeing are a few dozen miles from shore, while others are a few hundred. Which get developed will be the product of an optimization algorithm that balances the cost of the submarine cable with the scale of the resource and the size of the market on shore. Redd says the company plans to avoid sensitive habitats like those near hydrothermal vents. If Endurance taps just a fraction of the geothermal potential out there, it could generate a significant amount of electricity. Red estimates there's about 6 terawatts that could be developed in the next 5 to 10 years around the Ring of Fire. To put that in perspective, the world uses an average of about 20 terawatts across all energy sources at any given moment. Red said the idea is that you could support any major coastal city on the Ring of Fire. AI vendors promote their enterprise products as if they're turnkey solutions, but the chances are low that AI agents will hit the ground running right away. Unless you put in the effort to train a model on the specifics of your business, it is unlikely to understand how your company, for example, defines revenue or knows who is allowed to see which file. Now, that's part of the reason why we're seeing AI companies deploying engineers to help integrate their AI products into customers' systems. New York-based startup Jedify is attacking that gap. The company says its platform connects to enterprises' knowledge sources via APIs to build a context graph about their business that AI agents can use to work better. These sources can be databases, data warehouses, and lakes, SaaS apps, or BI tools, as well as unstructured sources such as reports, documentation, or code bases, and even Slack channels and meeting recordings. Now, to build that out, Jedify has raised $24 million in a Series A funding round led by Norwest. The round saw participation by returning backers S Capital VC and Cerca Partners, as well as new investor Oceans Ventures. Data giant Snowflake also participated as a strategic investor and is integrating the startup's tech with its AI products, such as its Cortex AI service, semantic views, and Cowork. Jedify's pitch is that to be useful within enterprises, AI agents need access to the relationships between entities, data, permissions, domain knowledge, workflows, operational assumptions, and company-specific terminology. This context, the company says, allows an AI agent to narrow its attention to the information that is relevant to a particular task instead of searching across everything a company has. Co-founder and CEO Asaf Henkin pointed to Kiteworks, a compliance company, as an example of how customers are using Jedify. Kiteworks connected Snowflake, Tableau, Notion, and internal playbooks, including documents and screenshots, to Jedify, then built agentic tools for different customer workflows. Henkin said they wanted to arm their sellers and account teams with a sophisticated app. You can think of it as both like a dashboard application and a real-time conversational application. When they go into a customer conversation, Jedify builds for them on the fly everything they need to know. And during the conversation, they can, in real time, get very specific details surfaced proactively. Henkin argues that Jedify's context graph is different from the semantic layers, metadata catalogs, and knowledge graphs that companies already use because it is multi-dimensional, capturing relationships across entities, data, people, permissions, and customers. It's also model agnostic and updates in real time as information flows into and out of the systems it is connected to. He said, when you want to enable an agentic solution to really be autonomous, to drive decisions across CRM data, Zendesk tickets, maybe telemetry data that's coming in real time, that's when a context graph is much better in terms of capabilities versus a semantic layer. Permissions are an obvious hurdle here. It wouldn't do for an agent to give an intern access to the CFO's revenue projections, for example. Henkin said his platform works to address that by inheriting permissions from identity systems, file systems, SaaS tools, and databases, including row, column, and table-level access rules, then lets its customers create additional groups that define what and whom agents or workflows are allowed to reach. It also offers observability and governance tools to help customers ensure their AI agents are behaving as intended. Jedify is currently targeting mid-market and large enterprise customers that have mature data stacks and multiple databases or data warehouses. Henkin said the company has between 10 and 20 early customers, one of which is the weather company, and is seeing interest from data-heavy sectors such as gaming, industrials, and consumer packaged goods. Snowflake's investment and partnership are notable because large data platforms are also trying to build similar capabilities. But Hinken argues that Jedify is complementary to such efforts because much of a company's data and most of its institutional knowledge is not usually stored with a single cloud provider. Hinken said the large data companies will tell you, oh yeah, just bring everything. But in reality, companies have multiple databases and warehouses and data solutions. The big thing is that not all of your data is in those environments, and most of your knowledge is not there. So it's a bit of a disadvantage that they actually have. Hinken also noted that for companies trying to do this on their own, training an AI model to build a comparable context layer can be cost prohibitive, especially as companies are scrutinizing and clamping down on their AI token usage. And the rapid advances in AI model development play into the company's broader bet. As models grow more capable and more interchangeable, proprietary context that helps those models work better within businesses could prove a valuable and durable moat. The startup will use the fresh cash for product development, hiring, and go-to-market motion. It brings the firm's total funding to about $33 million. That's all for now. For the latest in tech startups, go to TechCrunch.com.